Good morning. This week's Torah portion has the last 3 of the 10 plagues. And God tells Moshe, I will perform great miracles and take the Jewish people out with great signs and wonders, in order that you should tell over in the ears of your children and your children's children everything I performed in the land of Egypt. And here we have the Passover Seder, which has endured for thousands of years, where children and grandchildren gather around the table with grandparents and tell the story of the exodus of Egypt that occurred to our ancestors 3,000 years ago. And when you think about it, at a Passover Seder, you have 3 generations. But you really have many more generations, because that grandfather at the head of the table and that grandmother, they were once grandchildren at their parents' and their grandparents' Passover Seder. And that little grandchild at the Seder will one day be at the head of the table telling the story to his children and his grandchildren. And therefore you have not only 3 generations sitting around the Seder table, but if you have one long imaginary table, you actually have 7 generations sitting around the Passover Seder. And this has been the strength of the Jewish people, that we have always told the stories of our past, of our ancestors. But not only the pain and the suffering, also the wonders and the miracles that God performed. Today is a very sad day. It's the 100th day since October 7th. 100 days of pain and suffering, of anguish, of cruelty by Hamas to abduct men, women, and children, 85-year-old men and women, and 1-month-old babies sitting in captivity in dark tunnels for 100 days of suffering. And we as the Jewish people and around the world cannot rest, cannot stop, remembering them, fighting for their freedom. I met a woman last week who told me that on October 7th, she said, I will do something to remember every single day the plight of the hostages until they get home. And she said, I decided not to get a manicure until the hostages come home. She says, it's been 100 days that I have not received a manicure, and I will not have one until every hostage comes home. Every one of us in our own way, whether it's by refraining from doing something that's enjoyable every day to remember the plight of the hostages, or by adding something positive to our routine, a mitzvah that we will do every day. But change your daily routine. Remember the plight of our ancestors. We, the Jewish people, always remember. And we remember what happened 3,000 years ago. Surely we can never forget what's happening right now. But we will tell the story of the miracles and the wonders that will unveil and reveal itself as we will overcome this enemy as we have in every generation. Yet the pharaohs in every generation are hard-hearted. They're cold, they're indifferent to the plight of the Jews, just like the rest of the world, just like the Hague is, just like the UN is, just like the Red Cross is, just like the Ivy League university presidents are. But God always stands with justice, God always stands with the righteous, and we will prevail. This Wednesday, we are going to have an evening of heroes to honor some of the heroes of the story of October 7th. We will have Rabbi Davidian, who saved 750 people, speak at Palm Beach Synagogue. He will tell us how he saved 750 people on October 7th. We will have Rachel from Ofakim, the renowned Rachel Edry, who had 5 Hamas terrorists in her kitchen for 10 hours as she baked them cookies and made them food and played cards with them and sang songs with them while texting her son, who's a police officer, to come and rescue her and her husband, until her son broke down the door, killing all 5 terrorists and rescuing his mother and father. We will hear from a half a dozen heroes, but the truth is, if we wanted to have an evening for all the heroes of October 7th and since, we would need a room that could fill thousands and thousands or tens of thousands of heroes in Israel. The truth is, every Jew is a hero. But sadly, many of the greatest heroes are in heaven right now. There's a woman by the name of Hadass Lowenstern. Her husband Elisha was killed on the 7th night of Hanukkah. He was in a tank, and he was shot and killed. And she has 6 children. And he didn't have to go. He had 6 children. He was exempt from duty as a reservist. But he chose to go, and she agreed that he should go to defend the Jewish people. But one of his friends who was with him in the tank when he was killed told her during the Shiva that when they were sitting in the tank, they were talking about the letters they left behind, as is customary for You have soldiers that when they go to battle, they leave a letter that if God forbid they don't come home, there should be a letter for their loved ones. And they asked Elisha, did you leave a letter? And he said, no. And they asked him, why didn't you leave a letter for your loved ones? And he said to them, I made sure during my lifetime to spend enough time with everyone in my family that I love and to let them know everything I want them to know about me, about my dreams and hopes for them, and the values I hope and pray they will carry on. I don't need to leave a letter. I've already told them in person. That's the story of the Jewish people. Speak to your children, speak to your grandchildren. Remember the pain and the suffering that the Jewish people endured, but also tell the wonders, the miracles, the goodness and the greatness of God that has given us the strength as a Jewish people to live on and outlive all of our enemies. Have a meaningful day, a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you all Wednesday night at Palm Beach Synagogue to welcome some of the greatest heroes of Israel.